it up? Sound? Do we have sound? Yay. And you see the screen, computer screen like it is here? Awesome. Okay. Okay, so we're going to go over some of the lifts from our meet. And to get started, what I like to do is show decent technique. And then so we can talk about exactly what's happening, and that'll help us as we talk about the other lifts. Is anyone in there besides us? Okay. Okay. Just kind of keep an eye, like if people want to ask questions, they might. Yeah, kind of keep an eye on it, and probably the group me too, in case people are watching. My guess is a lot of people are going to watch later. So, why can't I full screen this? So we're going to look at a couple of examples of some lifts, and these aren't necessarily perfect, but they're from a similar angle that we're going to be looking at, and they're pretty decent. So this is a warm-up session or a training session. A couple of snatches. We're going to look at them full speed. So a couple of things that we need to be looking at when we watch these at full speed. First thing is the effort and the speed, how fast they're moving. So she's putting full effort right off the floor and really accelerating into the hip, into that pull. And so that takes a lot of effort, and that's something we need to be working on, is being a little bit faster through these lifts. Let's take one more at full speed, and then we'll slow these down a little bit. Okay. So you can see the bar accelerating as we get through that power position and start the pull. So we're going to break these down kind of frame by frame and really talk about what's happening. So the first big thing is, of course, setup. So hook grip, or squeezing as hard as you can, grabbing that thumb and squeezing as hard as you can. That's really important to get into a good lift and kind of sets everything up. Let's see, we're being a little slow on the advance today. All right, so she's going to lock into her start position. We're going to stop it right as the bar starts to leave the floor. Maybe. Okay, so we're off the floor. So right here, tightened up. So squeezing the shoulders back hard, arms are long and relaxed, but you're squeezing. Weight centered on your feet. So what kind of happens here is when you're just standing, you have a center of mass or center of gravity, and it's kind of right where everything is averaged out in your body, which is normally around kind of your belly button level, because most of our mass is down toward our legs, so that's going to lower that center of gravity down for most people. When we have a bar, now we actually move that center of gravity out in front of us, because the bar now, we're a system with the bar, and so the center of mass is kind of between us and the bar. So what we're trying to do is keep that bar as close to our center of mass as possible, and that's going to kind of minimize the amount of effort that we have to use horizontally. We're trying to move everything vertically in these lifts. So that's why the shoulders are slightly out in front, and that's going to keep that mass of the bar right under our shoulders. Does that make sense? So we can really transfer that force through our legs. So when you're in this position and all through these lifts, you have to have a tight brace. That's going to transfer that weight from your shoulders back into your hips and your legs where we're trying to use. So that's why we have to brace really hard at the start position. She's probably lifting up with just enough force so that the bar is not actually leaving the platform. So we want to lift up into that bar and be really tight, almost lifting it off before you lift the bar up so that there's no slack. Call that slack. When you lift off and you're not quite tight enough and you kind of have that jolt, you don't want to have that. You're tight. Now she has a pretty deep snatch position. It's a little tough to tell from this angle. She looks pretty upright to me. So hips are low, chest is really high, and that's okay. For her anatomy, for most people, her hips are going to be a little bit higher. We're going to be leaned a little bit more over the bar. but that varies between people. I'm just going to give you kind of the ideal. And then where's the weight at this position on your feet? Center of pressure on your feet. Yeah, right through the middle of the foot. Bar is right up against her shin. If it were to drop, it'd probably hit her right around the midfoot. So a lot of people, when you see the snatch, they're going to have their knees a little bit more in front of the bar and their shoulders out over the bar a little bit more and the hips a little higher. She's a little deep. So coming up, notice the torso angle as you come up. Shoulders stay high, torso angle stays the same, just the knees are straightening. You see that? Where's the center of pressure on the foot as she comes up to the knee position? Can you tell? Shift slightly back toward the heel. Slightly. You don't want to be on your heel, but shift slightly back. Watch the shins. They go vertical. As the knees straighten, the bar is staying right up against it as close as you can. Again, we want to keep that center of gravity as close to our center line as possible. So you have to keep the bar in close. There are some variations of this. I know Rachel tends to come out a little bit as she lifts off. That's a kind of a known variation. So again, we're talking through what's likely ideal, but there are going to be variations to this as you go through. So knees straighten up. Now she's a little what I would call compact here, so the knees are still fairly bent at this position. We want to get a little bit straight, and she does continue to straighten for a little bit longer as we pass the knee. And then watch the kind of a violent driving the knees under, and she gets a little on the toes early, I would say. So this is where the pull is initiated. So this is I think the way I teach, this is a little bit early. I would call this a little bit of an early pull. So shoulders are still over the bar at this position. The bar's a little low on the thigh. We normally want it more up toward the waist. And this is where the feet are flat, but then she initiates and pushes through into that full extension. Okay, so we've gone from knees fairly straight, they bend under the bar, and they extend through. And we get full extension at the ankle. You see a big shrug at the top. We're still braced all the way through. And now watch this pull. So we're actively pulling the bar, keeping the elbows high, pulling yourselves under the bar, and that's how we get that speed down into a low catch. Okay, so extending, pulling as hard as you can all the way through, pushing up hard at the bottom. A really skilled lifter, and you can kind of see, where's the top of this? See, the bar is not really moving anymore, so that's how high it needs to go. And that's about just below the chest, if you watch her from standing straight up. It only drops a little bit into the full catch. So she gets it. See how far the bar moves down? You don't have a lot of time. This is where you have to pull hard and then push up hard. That gives you a little bit more time and actually helps you get down into that bottom position to catch. Really good lifter is going to catch that bar around 80-85% of its max height. So you don't have a lot of time to get under it. We have to have full effort all the way through the pull and the turnover and push. Catching, watch where the feet land. So feet are fairly narrow. Hers come out a little bit wide, but not super wide. Oops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, and then come back in. Any questions on all that? Everybody's got that?
Is the bar dragging against your leg?
So it can. You certainly don't want it to lifting off. So it's not here. It looks like maybe a little drag, although I can see a shadow of a bar up until right about there. So that's where bar contact is happening. It's pretty high. It should be high. Some people will drag, and that used to be kind of a negative thing because that friction actually slows the bar down. For some people, dragging it up the thigh, that friction is actually offset by being in a better biomechanical position. You have better leverage. So for some people, dragging up the thigh works better. I tend to prefer a brush higher up. So we keep it away, but it's very close all the way up into that thigh position. Let's talk foot pressure through the transition. We kind of missed that. So as you're coming through, back under the bar, where's your foot pressure? We said here we're through the midfoot, maybe slightly back toward the heel. What happens as we come back through? it's going to go toward your toe. Now, we're always kind of on the arch of the foot, but the pressure is going to go slightly toward the toe as we go through the transition. The key is we're trying to finish. We're going to slightly into the toe, and then as we get back into power, sorry, I keep doing that. As we get back into the power position, we're going to be almost back toward the heel a little bit. So you can see she kind of continues and rocks into the toes. I would consider that probably a technique error, but you see that a lot when people are lifting, particularly when it's heavy. You see that, and you've seen world record lifts where people are up on their toes. So it does happen, but it's probably not ideal. Notice at the bottom, we're braced, pushing up as hard as you can. It's full effort all the way through the pull and into that catch. You have to push up hard. She's not letting the bar land on her. She's going up and meeting it as high as possible and trying to control it as soon as possible. You have to go up into the bar or it's going to crush you. Okay? So kind of have an idea of what we're looking for and what it should look like. So that's snatch. And we'll see how far we get if we get into clean and jerk today. If not, we can do this again. But let's take a look at some of our snatches and start working on it. So we're going to start with Amanda. And Amanda's snatches, when she gets on the platform, are a little different from practice. So but we're going to kind of see what happens with Amanda. So let's watch it. And just because of the program that I'm using, it's going to be in a little bit of slow motion. But we can take a look at it. Let's go full speed just to start. And it's a little bit slow motion. And this is a miss. We can learn a lot from our misses, so I like to show misses. What did you guys see just off the bat? Okay. On the pull? Yeah. So bar swings out a little bit in the pull. So when I'm coaching, I like to find what's the first mistake. Because usually the first mistake that sets up the rest of it and causes the rest of it to kind of snowball. So did anybody notice anything before that may have caused that? Let's see it again. Let's watch it one more time.
Knowing you, I would say out off the floor.
You're cheating. Okay. So out off the floor a little bit. Did you see it, or are you just going off of what you think I would say? Okay.
I don't know. It's not like screaming at me that it's
Yeah.
out off the floor, but
Okay. It's a little tough to tell from this angle since we're slightly offset. I actually kind of prefer right down the end of the bar, so we can really see bar path. But this is a little bit better viewing angle for most people. Now, if I can actually get this frame by frame to work. Oh, come on. There we go, maybe. All right, it's going to be a jerk. Sorry, just a second. My computer doesn't like me right now. There we go. Okay. Well, it liked me for a second. I'm going the wrong way. That's why. All right. So right at liftoff, we talked about being tight, kind of taking the slack out. Amanda does a pretty good job of that. What do you think about the start position?
I feel like she could be a little bit more over.
I think so too. So Rachel's saying a little bit more over the bar. Yeah, so chest is a little high. It's actually maybe even slightly behind the bar. On the snatch, we're looking for it right over the bar or even a little in front. So if you look where the shoulders are, if we were right down the side, at best they're right over the bar. They might even be a little bit back. And look at the hips. So hips are in line with the knee. Normally we want to see the hips slightly up higher, and that's going to force the shoulders over the bar just a little bit more. And so when you're in this position, generally you're kind of trapped back on your heels during the liftoff, and the bar is going to be a little bit farther out in front of you to help balance that, to keep you from falling backwards. And that's going to tend to make the bar go away from you and pull you forward. So let's see what happens as we lift off. It's very slight. You may not be able to see it, but I can see that bar going out a little bit. And the knees, I can kind of really tell that because the knees are still angling forward. So you almost have to have the bar go out away from you and around the knee at this when it's like that. So when we get to this position, where does it look like the center of pressure is, or her center of mass? Can you tell? Hint, look at the toes. You see that the toes are actually lifting off the floor? So this is what I was saying about that start position. Too far back in the heels, and now we're kind of trapped. I call this trapped in the heels when the toes start coming off the ground. And this bar is a decent distance away from the knee. I know some of these things are kind of tough to tell if you haven't been looking at this a lot. But that bar is actually probably about that far from the knee, a good 4 or 5 inches from the knee at this point. And so she's trapped in the heels. The bar's out in front to help counterbalance that. Remember, we're trying to keep that center of mass close to us. If we're falling backwards, we're going to use the bar to help balance us and keep us forward by keeping it out of the way. And so that's how we kind of put that center of mass, right in the middle. And so she's a little bit trapped on the heels at this point. And what that does is it makes it really difficult to transition without pulling the bar back in. So she's going to pull the bar in toward her. When you do that, that mass of the bar is going to pull you forward. And so you're pulling the bar in, but you're also pulling yourself to the bar. And now you're going to be forward up in the toes, and there's not much choice but to swing that bar out. So I'm going to back this up just a little bit. We'll take another look. I want you to watch where the toes come off the ground. So we're here, kind of falling back, pulling the bar in. You see that? How the bar is now moving horizontally toward her pretty aggressively. You see that? Now look what happens to her body mass, or where her body is positioned relative to the bar as that happens. That bar is coming in. Now let's shift focus down to the feet now. See that? Way up in the toes, and it's early. So start being in the toes at least there. There's probably a couple frames. If we had a faster frame rate, we would see that happen even sooner. And now look, let's go to power position, all the way in the toes. So the bar is coming back toward her. She's going to the bar and in the toes. So where's the bar going to go now? Yeah, there's no other way to do it except push it way out. You can see the arms almost fully extended. And then it loops in. You can actually see her jump forward. So again, let's watch where the feet are. And we could even put a line here. Well, let's not worry with that. But you can see where the feet are here, and now watch where they land. So not only is the bar forward, now she's pulling herself, continuing that forward motion up in the toes, continuing that through the pull, now pulling herself forward to try to catch the bar. So all that combined, it's too far in front. It actually almost ends up a little bit behind just because she jumped so far forward, but it's too far in front. There's no saving that. So that's when Amanda misses, that's kind of her typical style of missing. How would we fix that? So the way I coach, I would start off the floor. So this is all kind of set up as we talked about, lifting off the floor, being too far back in the heels, lifting off. Amanda's been working on that because she was too far forward, and now she's too far back. So we've got to kind of find that balance. So Start position, I would shift this a little bit forward, and that's probably what we're going to work on, is getting the shoulders just slightly forward over the bar and making sure that the foot pressure is right through the middle of the foot lifting off, so you can keep the bar close as you lift off, not letting it go too far out. So that's the first thing I'm going to work on with this. So we want to lean over the bar just a little bit and not get too far away from it. You got to keep that bar close. It should sweep in a little bit as you lift off, ideally. You probably will have to work some from the knee too, working on keeping the bar close at the knee. Like I said, it's too far out here. It's pulling her forward. One thing we have to work on too with weightlifting is we're trying to move the bar up. And so we're trying to use as little horizontal force as possible. We don't want to be pulling on the bar or letting the bar pull us forward. We're trying to keep that center of mass right in between us and right near our shoulders so that we can pull efficiently. And so working some from the knee and working on where the bar is at the knee position and then pulling through can also help with that. But I'm going to start with this one off the floor. Any questions on that one? I believe so. Yeah, I believe so. So I know it sounds, I'm not being harsh, right? It's just kind of the way it goes.
How forward is too far
How far is too far forward
forward on the snatch?
on what part?
When you start.
Like how far can it go out, the bar?
When you start position.
So where the shoulders are relative to the bar? Okay, so how far is too far forward in the start position? Typically you want the bar below the shoulder or your shoulders slightly in front. Now, if you get too far forward, what happens is the farther forward you go, the higher your hips get and the straighter your knees get. And so you want to see your shoulders above your hips and then your hips above your knees. So you're making a little bit of a triangle. And we'll take a look at that on the next one, make sure that's clear. So when you see your hips start to get like shoulder level, then you're probably too high. And you'll notice that when you lift off. If your hips are too high, you're just going to shoot your hips back. You're probably going to pull the bar in, and then you're going to be way out in front of the bar at the knee position. So you can kind of see that happen during the lift if you're too far out. We'll take a look at Bianca's Snatch next. And we're actually going to see a little bit of that with Bianca's lift, so that's good you brought that up. So we'll look at it full speed again. Let's zoom in here. Okay, so let's watch it full speed once or twice. Well, sort of full speed. Zoom back a little. Okay, let's watch it again. My slider will work. Okay, what'd you see on that?
The hips came out, and then and when she got to the knees were almost straight at that point.
Yeah, so hips shoot back, and that makes the knees almost straight, which means what's going to happen with the bar? Yeah, it's too far out. And you're going to see her aggressively pull the bar in to try to fix that. So let's take a look at that kind of step by step as we go. And actually I'm going to do a little bit of a velocity and acceleration analysis on this one. And you're going to see what mistakes that causes and where it can be detrimental. We'll see some actual graphs on what's going on. Okay, so right as she lifts off, it's going to be right here. What do you think about start position? Anyone else? I think it's pretty good. So shoulders are slightly in front of the bar here. Hips are a little low, but that's part of just how she's built. So that's okay. Looks like she's centered over the bar. Now, lifting off, we're pretty good. You see the torso angle stays mostly the same. Maybe the hips come up a little bit. We want to see those shoulders stay maybe a little higher on this one, but it's not bad. Now here's where the issue comes in. By the time you get to the knee, now they're up. So now the hips are at the same level as the shoulder. So it's very slight, but her hips do come up a little too fast to here. And now that the knees are almost completely straight. We want to get them close to straight, but this is almost completely. You can see how she's having to pull that bar in hard to try to keep it close to the knee. Look where the toes are. Toes are off the platform. So same kind of issue as Amanda, where now we're trapped back in the heel, we're trying to pull that in, but the shoulder is just too far in front. And what that does is that makes it difficult now to keep the bar moving through the transition and accelerating into the pull, and of course up on the toes. So very similar type of mistake. Now Bianca does a good job of getting, even though she's on her toes, she's in a decent power position. She's sitting up tall, and then she actually redirects and pulls straight up. So that bar actually stays close. And so she's able to save that. But what we're going to see, what do you think about this bottom position? Why? You see why? Watch the recovery. I know it's kind of hard from this position, from this angle, but watch the recovery. You'll see it. One, you can see that side of the foot come up. But again, this is why. Watch how she recovers. Knees come in. Completely sidesteps the recovery. Feet go way too wide. So we have to watch that foot position. Remember, we're going to go wider than where we lift off in that snatch stance, but that's too wide. And that can actually limit the squat. Now, it kind of works for her. She's able to get low, but it's probably not quite as efficient. Some of that, sometimes when people go too wide like that, it kind of tells me they're not pulling aggressively enough to get under it. They're kind of dropping under and just widening the feet. That gives you more time to get under the bar, in a sense. But let's go back to the pull here. So the hips come up, and we get that flat, and then we have to pull the bar in pretty aggressively to save it. So let's take a look at what this does. First of all, look how far the bar moves from the knee to here. There's a little spot here where almost all of the motion is coming from the back. You see that? The knees are almost not moving. These couple frames here. It's all in the back, trying to straighten that up. So we're using a lot of lower back instead of the hip. And let's take a look at what that does. So what I'm going to do is really quickly, this is going to be very approximate. I can't see the line. It's about here. Is that right? I can't see the line. So it's going to be very, very approximate. That's okay. We just want some semblance of numbers here. Okay. I don't know what that just did. 0.2096. There we go. All right. And what I'm going to do, delete that. We're going to track the end of the bar. All the way through the pull. So you can kind of see the bar path from that. So this is kind of a cool way of doing this. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there. So this is going to give us a little bit of information. I'm going to look at the Y velocity. So this is just the way that the bar is moving in the vertical plane. And we have to be a little bit careful because we're offset a little bit, so this is not going to be perfect. So Bianca actually does a little bit better job on this one here than I saw on another one I looked at. But you want to see this velocity kind of increase and then explode at the thigh. So this one she didn't do too bad of a job. There was another one I was looking at yesterday where this velocity line actually flattened out. And what does that mean? If it's flat and then starts to go again. Yeah, there's no more acceleration. You're no longer accelerating. Now almost all the motions in the X component or in the horizontal component. So this lift in particular is a little bit better than another one that she had. But if we look at the acceleration graph, so it's kind of a steady acceleration. And you can see a little bit of a drop, which we sort of expect. Now I can click here and actually show where that happened. So it's that drop in acceleration right in that point we were talking about, where it's almost all back usage instead of driving through with the hips all the way through. You never want to have a point where we're just using back. We always want to have those knees connected, where when we're straightening up the back, the knees are also bending. That's going to keep the bar moving all the way through the pull, and then we have a violent acceleration into the power position. Okay.
So that's a graph of the acceleration.
This is acceleration. Mm-hmm. If we look at velocity, just for interest, where's peak velocity going to happen? Don't look at the graph. Should be right at the top. Yeah, right at the top of the triple extension. There you go. So when we click on the peak velocity, it's exactly what we have right at the top. So questions on Bianca, does that make sense? Is this helpful so far?
I was going to ask, so like, how much of this are you going to try and work on, like fixing technique, or are you just going to try to work around it and get her?
Yeah, there are some things. So what needs to be fixed with Bianca is keeping the chest high. She's been doing better about that in practice, but once we get to the platform, those old techniques come back out. I think we'll actually see on the clean even more exaggerated, and we'll actually see where that velocity levels off and the acceleration actually drops as she passes the knee, and that's detrimental. So it needs to get fixed. This is mostly just going to be about timing and keeping the chest high, and not letting the hips come back. So some of that's just carrying over practice into competition, which happens.
I was going to say the same thing about Amanda's, because if that was her first lift also, it's like getting some of the jitters out all the time. So like,
Yeah.
I feel like your technique flaws tend to come out on your opener.
Yes. Yeah. And so now we're getting to psychological stuff and being able to control anxiety and perform under pressure. And that takes experience. For most people, it's just experience. So we may just get through snatches today. We can do this again for the cleans. But I think let's just do the snatches today so we can really dig in on them and not rush. Emily, you ready? Yeah. All right. It's time. So we're going to see, like we were just talking about, that stopping. And this is one of your heavier snatches, but I think it was a good illustration. So let's take a look full speed. We'll call it full speed. Some point it's going to start. Okay, let's see it again. Okay, what did y'all see? And go one more time. Okay.
I'm kind of amazed that you didn't use it behind.
Yeah.
I was like,
This is a good catch.
Did the bar slam the?
yeah.
Slam the thigh.
It sounded like hip thigh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to take a look at that. It's a known problem. All right. What about on the setup? Let's start with that. Shoulders could be a little forward? Possibly.
I feel like the hips come up a little bit.
Okay. So you get almost a dynamic start, except it's with your chest. So you're dropping your chest. So what I'm seeing is right off the floor, it looks okay, maybe a little out. You see it go out just a little bit, but it's just a tiny bit. I don't think it really compromises you. So it may not be something we really focus on. But it can maybe come back a little bit off the floor. What about the shoulder level? Hips come up maybe a little, tiny bit. But so far it's not bad. You are back a little on your heels. You can see your toe lift off. But if I'm looking at the center of pressure and center of gravity, I think this looks decent. I think you're okay up to the knee for the most part. I'll see what happens. Look at this. What's going on there? What do you all see? Almost entirely with the arms. It's almost entirely pulling the bar in with your arms. There's almost no motion in the hips or the knees at this point for several frames. So good. Let's see, what is that? Well, I'm not going to do that math. I was thinking how many tenths of a second, but I'm not going to do it. Yeah, but it's a while. So that bar is probably slowing down quite a bit. We'll take a look at the velocity graph. I expect to see a slow down in velocity around there. Okay. So
Where you would say that you need to like get back under the bar
sooner.
as soon as you pass the knee.
Yeah, as soon as you pass the knee. So those knees should be bending about here. You should be driving the knees forward and sitting back. Instead, that doesn't really start till here. So what's going to happen when you start that late? The only thing you can really do is bounce it off your thighs. You can't get under it and accelerate up. You've got to kind of bounce it off the thigh. And that's, see, it goes straight out and you actually go back, which is usually what happens when you bounce it. Let's see where you land relative to where you pulled. About the same spot. But look at this. You actually jump, see your feet going backwards? Now the bar's so far out in front and you're pulling on it. And I can tell you're pulling on it because you actually pull yourself back forward as you drop. Can you see that a little bit? It's kind of interesting. So you're starting back, then you fly back, and then a little bit forward as you land. So we know that bar is way out in front. Okay. So let's take a quick look. I want to do we'll do the velocity tracking again. One other thing before we do that. I think it's okay. It looks like maybe you shrugged a little early, but I think you're okay. All right, so let's go back to the floor. And I'm not going to worry about the calibration. It shouldn't matter. Just don't look at the numbers here. They're not going to be accurate. Yeah, you really see that pull in and then bounce out. You could definitely see it. Even not looking down the side, you can see it. By the way, if you all want to use this program, it's free. I can show you kind of how. Look at that. It's exactly what I expected to see. And look where it is. That's velocity. So you're actually almost, well, you're getting, again, these are not accurate numbers, but big drop in velocity as you come through that. And that's why you're having to almost reaccelerate the bar. Sometimes you're going to see that happen right at the hip. It's going to be even higher. This one was actually a little better than some of the ones I've seen. But you can really see that velocity drop, and you can see exactly where it's happening. Right there where we were talking about. Okay. If we look at acceleration, look at this. It actually gets negative. So you're actually getting slow here, slowing down. And then, which is what we expect from velocity. But then you have to try to completely reaccelerate the bar to get going in that pull. So it's going to be really inefficient. If we can get that to where your velocity even stays the same through there, you're going to be in a much better position. Your snatch is going to get much better. We've got to work on that. So fixing that, a lot of it's just more repetition and timing. Making sure that you're able to keep the bar moving, you're transitioning a little bit sooner, and that you keep the knees bending as you sit back. And we're not trying to pull in with the arms. We're not trying to use the lower back to do anything. The knees and the hips are connected. As the knees bend, the hips are coming back under the bar, dropping under the bar. Make sense? So that's another one where it's just more practice.
I have another question about the start.
Okay.
I don't know, are we moving on?
Nope, go ahead.
So I know
Yeah, so hyperextension. You're talking about the opposite of rounding?
Flexion of the low back, obviously.
Yeah.
You want to have a neutral spine.
Right.
But I feel like with Emily's back, it's almost curved in the other way.
Yeah, it's hyperextended.
Superior tilt or something.
Yeah, and you do have a little bit of hyperextension. You could actually fix that by just leaning slightly over the bar and bracing instead of trying to sit up too tall. So you do want a hard arch, and you see some good lifters who have this actual hyperextension, but I would want to see that more of a flat back versus a hyperextended in that thoracic area. So we might work on that a little bit too and see if that helps. Main thing for that would be injury prevention, because you can actually bulge the disc in the front from being hyperextended like that. Okay.
It's cool that you still made that. Like,
Yeah.
the velocity thing. Because I feel like that shows that if you can actually like get the velocity started from the ground, you're just gonna like shoot it.
Yeah. I mean, like basically just from power position, power to that.
Right.
Yeah. You could actually argue by the rules that this is a no lift because the bar actually didn't go in one continuous motion overhead. I can't think of a situation where that's actually been called in a competition. I'm sure it's happened, but that's okay. What's that?
They actually call that.
Technically, yeah. It has to, the bar has to move in one continuous motion from the floor to overhead. So if the bar stops or reverses direction,
But those numbers may not be accurate, right?
yeah,
So
well,
you're not actually-
like I said, no one's probably gonna call it unless it's just blatantly obvious, like you pick it up and set it back down. But technically, it's possible.
At the needs in the future, do motion analysis.
I'm sure someone has examples of that happening and whatever. Okay, next, Gabby. Gabby's gonna have the same thing, I can guarantee it. So Gabby's only been snatching for a couple months, so we got to give her that. And it's not too bad. But let's take a look. Okay. Anything jump out to you?
The hips again, but
She also pulls the bar in a little bit. There.
Yeah, and we'll see why.
is the bar going around her knees?
Yeah, let's take one more look. So Miles saying the bar is going around the knees. Let's take one more look. A little bit. Yeah, I'd say a little bit. Okay. Definitely a lot of room to go up on the snatch. That's power snatch. But let's take a look at what's going on here. So start position, what do you think? Looks okay. I'm going to make sure. Yeah, it's lift off.
She's pretty tall, so I can't tell if she's like a little rounded or if that's just
Yeah.
too far forward or if that's just how she's built.
Yeah, snatch is always probably going to be uncomfortable for Gabby starting out because of the longer legs. I would say just slightly rounded. Could be a little bit straighter here, a little bit more extended in the spine. Really squeezing the shoulders back. Some of that's just going to be practice and getting down in that position. So lift off. So she almost has a little bit of almost a dynamic start in a way. She kind of lifts off and then locks in a little bit, but the hips lock in, I would say, a little too high. So when I say lock in, I mean the hips and shoulders rising at the same rate. And she doesn't really hit that point until, almost like Bianca, kind of bent over the bar. So we're going to have similar issues like with Bianca. Now, she doesn't pull it in quite as aggressively. But what that does is now you make that early thigh contact. All right, so that's where thigh contact is happening. It's about mid-thigh, whereas we want it to be more like in the waist. So this is going to be going forward for sure. And you see that rock into the toes and bouncing out just a little bit. Now, Gabby's so strong, it doesn't really matter. She still makes it easy. But to really get up to her potential, we've got to work on some of that timing in the pull. So let's back it up a little bit and really break this down some. So I always say I'm looking for the first mistake. You could argue it's probably that. Let's see where the center of pressure in the foot is. It looks like it stays a little bit back in the heel. And that's what we want. All the toes come up a little bit. Now, what do you see through here? Anything?
The knees are going back, but
Yeah, I would say, and you can see, watch the toes. See how the toes keep coming up? And there's a little even a shift out. She actually shifts her foot out, that left foot. See how that turns out at the knee? So that means a lot of pressure is back in the heel. She's way back in the heel to be able to do that first. The other way I can tell that she's way back in the heel is those knees almost pop backwards. We see a few people here do that, where they hit that knee position. Instead of just pushing the knees out of the way gently, and they're just getting out of the way of the bar, she's actually popping the knees back. And now the bar's out in front, and that's part of having the shoulders way out, because that's again, trying to keep that bar in towards you just a little bit. So you're kind of popping yourself back and pulling that bar in just a bit. So we're a little bit trapped in the heels. It's a little too far away from the body. What I would want here is the shoulders a little bit higher, the hips a little lower, the knees a little bit more bent, and the bar right up against there. So we would change that to where we're almost, I'd say, so this is the angle I'm looking at here to the hip. I'd want it just a little bit steeper. So that's going to bend the knee a little bit more and keep her chest a little bit more upright. And then we're going to be in a better position to get the hips back under. But as it is, too far back in the heel, we're going to pull the bar in to try to fix that. And again, you pull the bar in, you're going to pull yourself to the bar. That's where you make that early thigh contact and you're up in your toes. So that's just a little bit out in front. Still a really aggressive pull, so she kind of saves it. We've got to fix a couple of those little timing issues. And this looks pretty typical, someone who's trying to go kind of heavy right as they're learning how to snatch. Some of those timing issues will get fixed, but we see some more things that are clean. But we'll fix that stuff. Questions on this snatch? Kind of see where the problems come in.
is the timing good in the transition for her, or like you want an earlier transition from?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we're asking, is the timing good starting the transition? I would say it's a tiny bit late because of this position here, the knee. You're almost always going to be late getting back under it because you're in such an inefficient, you have so little leverage in this position where your hips are too high. It's like a stiff leg deadlift. And you're trying to come back under the bar. Yes, from a stiff leg deadlift, the bar is way too out away from you. You're too far back. And now you have to pull yourself back forward into that bar. It's really difficult to do versus having the bar in the right position, having your center of gravity as close to you as possible, and now you don't have to do much work. You're basically just driving your knees under. Versus from here where the bar's out, now you've got to do a lot of work pulling the bar in, and you just can't get all that to come in together. You do that a little bit in your pulls too. When I say you need to start your transition sooner, a lot of times that's what's happening. That bar's a little too far away from you. You shot your knees a little too far back, and now you just physically are not going to be able to properly transition from there. Okay? So when you get to the knee position, it should feel like the weight is through your hips. If you feel it kind of in your lower back, then you're probably too extended, the bar's too far out. It's got to be close, and that weight's still driving through your hips. And you should be centered on your feet. like your low back. Yeah. So what I like to do, and Miles is asking about cues to try to keep your hips engaged, mostly just using your hips and your quads as you lift off the ground and get to the knee position. What I like to do are just those deadlifts up to the knee. And when you do those correctly, you're only going to feel your hips and your legs pushing away if you do it right. You'll have almost no tension in your lower back because it's just the quads and the hips pushing you up. And if you can get that and be in that position up to the knee and everything moving all at once, when you hit the knee position, your hips and shoulders stop. A lot of people, what will happen, particularly if they're doing this, and Gabby actually does this on these, is the hips will rise and then the shoulders will stop, or sorry, the hips will rise and then the hips stop moving and the shoulders keep rising a little bit. And you see that timing issue in those deadlifts up to the knee. Hips come up and then the shoulders finish and continue coming up after the hips are finished. So we need to see those stop at the same time, right at the knee. And when you do that and you feel the weight right through your hips, that's generally you're in the right position. You've got the bar in the right spot to continue. So that's a good thing to do in your warm-ups is just keep doing that. You need to almost like pumping your legs into the floor. Okay? Go with this one? All right, a couple more and we'll be finished. Morgan, let's take a look at one of her snatches and then we'll finish with Rachel. Which one do I want to look at? Let's look at this one. So I think this is Morgan's opener. And this one, if I remember right, this is a pretty good lift. So we might look at this one and also the one she missed really quickly. I think we can move kind of quick through these. Do we have any questions in the live chat or anything? Group me? Okay, good. Wow. Welcome to our 3 current viewers. Thanks for joining us. Cool. That's all right. Just boost the numbers. All right, so let's watch this one full speed.
Morgan gave a smiley face with a tear.
Hi, Morgan. It's time. All right, so what do we see on this one? Let's watch it. Watch it again. What do you think? One more time?
Somebody else can say it. Out off the floor.
A little bit. Out off the floor a little bit. Man, we're seeing a theme.
It's so slight though.
It is, but we're going to look at why it's important on this one. So, because this is why I wanted to show this one. It's a pretty decent lift, but it does go slightly out. Now, past the knee, and it comes in a little, and then we're up in the toes. It's this one, if you look at it kind of frame by frame, it doesn't look too bad. Maybe up in the toes a little early. What I want you to look at, we're going to watch it full speed one more time. And what I want you guys to see is pay attention. We've been talking about that center of gravity. Tell me where you think her center of gravity shifts as she lifts off the floor. Oops, I just skipped. Okay, it should work. It'll take a second. You see it?
It's like the knees went back a tiny bit.
Yeah. But pay attention to where you think, if you were doing this lift, kind of put yourself in her position. Watch kind of how everything's working together and see if you can tell where your weight's probably shifting or where her weight's shifting as she lifts off. Can you see it?
Forward. Yeah.
Yeah, right in through here. I'm going to see if I can kind of scroll it enough to get an idea. So right here looks pretty balanced, right? Setup looks pretty good. In a good position. Lifting off, lifting off, lifting off. Can you see that bar getting away and now she's kind of falling forward a little bit? Can you tell that? I know that's really, really subtle. I don't know if you see that shift right about mid-shin. You're going to see the shift of the weight just a little forward. Watch the bar at the mid-shin. See it? One more time. I know that's a really slight shift. Kinda? Okay. It's very slight, but that's the difference between being in a good position to pull and just being a little bit forward. So her weight's just been pulled a little forward by the weight, and that's where it's in the toes a little early. You can really, I think, should be able to really tell if we were kind of draw a line, kind of averaging where her body mass is versus where the bar is. This weight's going to be a little bit in front. We're in the toes. And now watch the landing. So feet leave the floor right about here. Watch where they land. See that? She has to jump a good 8 inches forward, 8 inches forward. All right, because that bar is just very slightly in front. Now, more aggressive pull might have saved that too, being at the top. That's something we're working on with Morgan. Being really aggressive, trying to explode the hip and pull as hard as you can. Might have saved that and gotten it a little bit back, and that's something we're working on. But it's just that really slight forward motion off the floor that's causing a lot of that. So this again is going to be kind of working on that lift off, that initial lift off, repping that over and over, making sure that weight, the center of mass is in the right spot every time. Just really quickly, because it's going to be the same thing, but I want to show you, I believe this is her miss. And we're going to see where it becomes too much to overcome. So this is just too heavy to overcome, but it's the same error. So again, really slight mistake, but when it gets heavy, makes all the difference. Just a little forward there, and now it's out in front, and it's just too much. Yeah. So she's definitely strong enough to get that. It's just that those little errors that you can't overcome when it's heavy. Yeah, and that's another thing. She's trying to basically power snatch it. We've got to keep working on getting under the bar. But that will come. All right, Rachel. It's time. Roast of Rachel. Last one for today. So let's take a look. First of all, one thing we can do that's really cool with Rachel is the frame by frame hair flip. Let's see if I can do it.
I was gonna say, can you do a motion analysis on my hair vault?
All right, anyways. So. Okay. What do you see? A little bit of jump back. So this one's going to be kind of an interesting one to see with that. Let's watch it again. Some jump back is okay. What do you think?
Maybe the start position is a little upright.
Let's take a look.
I was thinking my shoulders look a little behind.
Yeah, and we've kind of worked on that a little bit, and this is also causes the bar to come off the floor forward a little bit. So maybe the shoulders could be a little over the bar and the hips a little bit higher. What happened when we fixed that? When we tried to work on that? Something happened.
It was working better, and I probably just sort of like lapsed back into it.
Probably.
I
So
wasn't thinking about any technique. I was just like,
yeah.
go for it.
Probably so. So kind of again, you get on the platform, technique kind of reverts back. So we've been working on the shoulders being a little bit farther forward of the bar and the hips up a little higher. Kind of reverted back at the competition. That happens. So maybe something to think about. And the bar goes out a little bit, partially because of that, partially because that's just how it seems to go for you. And we've worked on it a little bit, and I've gotten to the point where I don't think it really affects your technique that much. And it is something you see even in high-level lifters. We've been talking about kind of ideal bar path. There are variations based on anatomy and that sort of thing. So that does happen. But I don't think it's too big of an issue. If you look at the foot pressure, you do get a little back. You can see that toe coming up. That toe likes to come up, but that's another kind of racial thing. Knee position, how's that look? Looks okay. I mean, shoulders are a little back, I would say, and that might also be contributing to that kind of in the knee or in the heel. But coming off the floor, back looks good. Hips and shoulders rise at the same time. We're in a pretty decent position at the knee. Good timing on that transition. So it comes under. Look at that left foot, though. That heel's up. So this foot's flat, mostly a little up. This heel's up. And so that's where your knees kind of cave in a little bit, and that heel wants to come up. So you do get a little bit on the toes. Let's see, back to power position right here. So you kind of initiate the pull about here. Not too bad. Contact, extension. Bar stays pretty close. Let's see where your foot lands relative to your pull. Come on.
So only in the power position, only my left foot is like really on the toe.
Yeah, the right foot seems okay. It's that left foot that's always wanting to roll up.
And that's interesting because if you saw this from the front, you'd see that I jumped sideways when I.
Yeah, that foot shoots out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But both feet, I don't know. I do have a video from the front.
Yeah, you get that little rotation, and that might be part of it because that foot's coming up early, and so you're not able to drive as much. You kind of rotate toward it because you can see that foot did rotate back some.
Yeah.
So we got to figure out why that's happening. But it's not a bad lift. I'd say it's not bad. Power snatched it. So. One thing I did notice, I'm going to do really quickly, we're going to do the velocity analysis on this one. I don't know if it's this one or the other one that I had picked out. But let's just real quick search and track this. It's not too bad. That's velocity. Let's look at acceleration. So I thought this was the interesting thing, more so than anything else. You do get quite a dip in acceleration, or a little bit of a dip in acceleration passing the knee, which is not entirely uncommon, but maybe something to look at. We talked about how you tend to slow down at the knee and hesitate, and now you can almost see it right here, where you just slow down a little bit in terms of how much you're moving the bar. So that might be something to look at, something to work on. I think the other one's a little more pronounced, or at least one of the cleans. We'll take a look at maybe the cleans. You'll see that a little bit more pronounced. There's still that little bit of slowdown, but it's not bad. It's hard to see, just with the naked eye right now. So it has gotten better. It might be something to look at too. And that could be a consequence of the feet shifting right there. But not bad. All right. Anything else? Questions on those?
One of the things I was wondering is how to, I have a hard time getting under the bar if it gets heavier.
Mm-hmm.
Is the only way to train for that to just train heavier weight until you get comfortable with it?
Yeah, so you have trouble getting through the timing and getting through the full transition when it's heavy?
Yeah, there's like a threshold
Mm-hmm.
where I think for me it's 60, where it's
Uh-huh.
like I can't just catch it standing up.
Oh, you're talking about on the catch.
On the catch, yeah. Where
Okay.
I have to actually
Uh-huh.
to catch it correctly.
Uh-huh.
And I feel like I've tried to like practice with lightweight to get under it, and, but it doesn't feel the same.
Yeah.
And so
Mhm.
kind of wondering if like the only way to get good at that is just to keep on doing heavy weight, or
Yeah.
there's different things you can do to try.
Yeah. So being able to catch a snatch in a squat position. And so the main things that we're going to do to work on that, of course, catching and riding everything into the squat, just to be smooth getting under the squat, being comfortable having a lot of weight overhead. Other things that can help, if you are, when it starts to get heavy, you'll tend to, it's almost like a scary feeling to pull yourself under it and putting that full effort, because you actually drop faster than gravity. And when you really feel that, I know the first couple of times that happens particularly, it kind of freaks you out a little bit. It's a very fast drop, and it feels like the bar is going to crash on you. So some of that's overcoming some of that and really learning how to pull against the bar. And making sure, like we were talking about at the beginning, pulling against the bar as hard as you can, as long as you can, and then pushing up as hard as you can, making sure that the bar doesn't crash on you, because that's what's really going to get you. Other than that, a lot of it is getting stable under the bar. So things like drop snatches, where we're trying to accelerate and push ourselves down, and then being comfortable with catching that bar and being solid at the bottom are things we have to work on. But a lot of it too, there are things I like to do. That's part of why we're doing those snatches from the power position. So you can't pull the bars high because you're having to accelerate it in a very short period of time. So that's going to force you to pull against it and try to catch low. So those can help. And if you really focus on trying to get those fairly heavy enough that you can actually pull yourself under, I think those are really helpful. The other good one that I like are snatches from full extension. So that's where we're up on the toes, and then we're just going to give it a little bit of a shrug and then try to catch low. And that's forcing you to have to pull against the bar as you drop under it to catch it. So all of those can work. Some people argue that those don't translate super well. In combination, I've seen people really improve with their catch depth. The main thing for me, and so I've been working with you guys, is every time you snatch, every time you clean, go ahead and write it down. Every time. You have to get comfortable being down in that squat position, catching, being stable, because that's going to affect it too. If you're not stable, you're jumping back, jumping forward, doing all those things, and the bar's not in the right spot, that's going to affect you whether or not you can catch it low. So we've got to learn to be consistent with our catch position and then be able to go right into that full squat every time. A lot of it's practice. We just have to do it over and over and over. Anything else? Okay, so let's call it there for today. We'll come back and do cleans on another day. All right.